on the call and stay on, so I can go anytime.
Okay. That's going live right now. Okay, everybody. Good morning. Once again, here we are, spread out a little ways, but we'll make this work. I need a motion for the agenda. Courtney, is there anything else to add? Anybody else got anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second that. Neil Bach.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay. Okay, we have two sets of minutes. Let's do the Monday, March 23rd minutes that they leave first. I didn't see anything out of the ordinary with those. I would make a motion that we approve the 23rd minutes.
Second, Gene Miners.
Okay, we have a first and a second on the minutes of March 23rd. All those in favor of approval say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now let's do the 25th minutes and we'll be caught up to date. And that was our EM Emergency Management Director update.
The minutes look good to Shetler. I'll make a motion to approve those minutes.
Houseman.
Okay, we have a motion for approval and a second for the minutes of March 25th. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's jump into Ray. You want to go first, or does anybody else have a preference? But I think we'll just get Ray on and get him moving down the road. Is that okay?
Fine.
Okay. All right, Ray, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine.
All right. So again, assuming everybody's got this tower site planning report in front of them, I would like to use that as our outline to follow here for this discussion this morning, and try and focus as best we can with covering the details and so forth. To open this discussion, we presented this report as a outline and plan for moving forward with the tower site work for the new radio system project that the county is responsible for. Of course, there are some elements that Motorola is responsible for, but the four areas that we need to focus on are the dispatch tower site, the Manning tower site, the Coon Rapids tower site, and up in the northeast part of the county, either the Lanesboro or Litterdale sites. And I'll just start out here going through them one by one. And if anybody's got any questions, let's stop and talk about them and go take it from there. So to start with, at the Carroll County Courthouse Dispatch Center, frankly, there's not a whole lot of work to be done there, which focuses on some minor electrical upgrades in that radio room up in the garage, and where Motorola is going to be installing a microwave link. And I guess that brings up my first question. Does the county have an electrical contractor that they prefer to work with at the courthouse site?
I don't believe we have a preferred one. Is this going to meet a threshold where we need to bid anything out? Possibly. Would that be our only drawback here?
What, that actually brings up a good question. What is your dollar threshold on these sorts of things?
I don't. Does anybody have a recollection of that off the top of your head?
I would just be guessing, so I don't really know.
I would be in the same ballpark.
I know when we have audits, the state auditors, they use $1,000.
Courtney believes that the state auditors seem to lean around the $1,000 mark a lot when they ask questions.
Okay.
That's about as good as information, I guess, as we could have. Do you think that is under 1,000 or over 1,000, Ray? I mean, you got a rough guess?
Well, in this document, we've estimated 1,500, so
Okay,
you know, most likely would be over $1,000.
okay. So do you think we should put it out to bid for a couple, three, have Zach find 2 or 3 people that have worked here before?
Sure. And just for clarification, as we go through this, we talk about bidding, but I want to clarify the difference between requesting proposals and bidding, even though they're, you know, sort of the same thing. Obviously, request for proposal is a somewhat more informal process where we would lay out the requirements and send it out and ask for, you know, sometimes basically a 2-page proposal. And just verify that they've got insurance and those sorts of things. When we get into the higher dollar value, is maybe where we'll start having a look at a quote unquote bid. But I'm hoping that most of what we're planning to do here can be done through the request for proposal process. So should I talk to Zach about,
Yeah, do you have like a boilerplate you have that we can use, Ray, that would cover what you think should be done, the insurance requirements?
yeah,
Okay,
we'll come up with something for that. So,
okay. Well, that's how I would approach that, I think. Does everybody else kind of concur with that?
Yeah, I see that on your the costs on page 11, I guess it is, your last page. So you have more than, you know, you have the Coon Rapids and then you have the Lanesboro. So I mean, would you put this request out for all of those at the same time, and we can how would you accept bids on those, as one bid or as individual bids, or how would you do that?
that's a good question, Dean. I think we're going to do some of these separately or independently to keep people focused. You know, this work in the electrical room or in the radio room needs to get done fairly quickly. And if we bundle that with all this other stuff where we want to buy generators and put in primary service, that could certainly slow things down and maybe even scare some people away. So I would recommend that we do some of these separately. You know, it's a little bit more tedious, but I want to keep things moving as best possible here.
So you're maybe recommending site by site?
Potentially, when, you know, as Dean mentioned, we've got electrical work at Coon Rapids and probably Lanesboro. We might end up bundling those together because they'll be very similar in scope. Down at Manning, it's a whole different situation where we're just going to work with their vendor for wiring and so forth down there, I think. So
Okay,
we'll bundle as best possible. How's that sound?
that sounds good to me. Cut down on some of the paperwork and speed the process up a little bit.
Right. Good question. Thank you. All right. Any other questions on the courthouse site? Okay. Item number 2 is the City of Manning Tower. And again, the county will be leasing space at this tower site from the city of Manning for the project. The city down there has been cleaning up their tower and moving some things around. They've had AT&T FirstNet as a tenant for, I don't know. Jason, how long have they been there? A year or more?
Not quite a year yet, but yeah, that's
Okay, thank you.
maybe it's about a year.
And then, well, I got you, Jason. Is it T-Mobile that's coming on the site as well?
I believe that's correct. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, the city is offering to lease space to the county for a very reasonable fee. And, but we need some work that needs to be done there. But the first thing is to establish a lease agreement. And we have provided a draft lease template for that use. And in fact, Jason, do you want to give a status update on that lease draft agreement?
Yeah. So Ray provided us with that draft lease. I provided that to the board for comment or direction on what to do with that. It was decided to send it to the county attorney. The county attorney took it, had a number of modifications that he made to it. Ray and I have looked at all those modifications, and all of them I think are acceptable, except for one modification where the county attorney removed the requirement for us to do a loading analysis or structural analysis with our equipment and whatever current equipment is on there. Ray has informed us that that is customary. The tower owner has informed us that's customary and required that we do that work and provide it. So that's kind of the only thing that I guess that we had concern with that came back from the county attorney. We haven't had that discussion with him yet to see, but you know, we wanted to inform the board about it, I guess, and see what we want to do. There may have been some misunderstandings at the time that he reviewed that of Ray's involvement or whatever on that lease document too, but don't know if we should just add it back in or ask the county attorney to do it, or how the board would like to proceed with that.
Well, to me, you need to get in contact with the county attorney and explain to him the normal procedure here. Don't let the ball bounce around in our court, I guess. Need to get that moving down the road to get this to them. So you want to contact him, and or you or Ken or
Ken, have you talked to him about that? I know we've discussed it.
I have not yet. No.
Okay. So we'll have that conversation, one of us, I guess.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Jason. So next item as was the structural analysis of the tower. And this is a standard requirement that anytime you're going to join or put your equipment on somebody's tower, you have to bring in a structural engineer and have it reviewed. And so there's several different firms that do this work. We've got an estimated cost of $1,800 to $2,500 for this site. And this kind of circles back around to our question about purchasing and requests for proposals and so forth. One of the, I think, got a couple thoughts here. Sorry. One of the challenges is a lot of these structural firms do this all the time. And, I've already reached out to one of them for a proposal on the site. But if we send out an RFP, I suspect it's going to slow things down. And who can we check with who within your group could find out what in fact the dollar value is, or the threshold, at what point we have to go out for multiple proposals? In working with other counties in Iowa, now that I think about it, seems to me it was around $2,500. And Below that, you were allowed to go out and just procure services from somebody.
Ray?
Yeah.
Courtney, our auditor, said she will look into that and she will email you with that answer.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Courtney.
Ray, while we're on the subject of having the towers inspected, and this is an issue, both the Manning Tower and especially with the newer Coon Rapids Tower, would this work already have been done by AT&T or some other, entity? Are we repeating or doing work that doesn't have to be done, especially on a new tower? And I'm jumping ahead to Coon Rapids, but I'm also talking about a fairly new tower in Manning.
Good question, Neil. And the answer is yes. And as redundant as it might seem, what happens here is the tower, whether it's the Manning Tower, which is, I think, 20 years old, or the Coon Rapids Tower, which is brand new, they were designed for a certain amount of loading and antennas. But we're adding new equipment to that. So, for example, at Manning, a year ago, AT&T FirstNet paid for a structural analysis. And then last summer, T-Mobile paid for a structural analysis, again, through an independent engineering firm, because they were changing what's on the tower. And now we're going to be doing the same thing. Fortunately, we can take the report, the most recent report that was done by T-Mobile, and build upon that. So it does end up saving some cost, but it still has to be done. And
would this also be true with a new tower, such as wouldn't the manufacturers of the tower have this done? I'm talking about Coon Rapids. I'm jumping ahead a little bit.
Sure. And again, a good question. Part of this process is a record keeping and documentation process, so that the tower owner has a current report on hand, on file, with the most recent antenna, transmission lines, and loading calculations for the site. So while it seems like it might be, I don't want to say a waste of money, but it does need to be done, and it's standard practice in the industry.
Thank you. Not the answer I wanted. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we need, at Manning, we need a structural analysis. The next item is space within the building. And as outlined in the report here, there's a workstation that's pictured in the report on page 3 with a bunch of computer stuff on it. And they are removing, or maybe they already have moved that, to make room for the 2 racks or cabinets that Carroll County will be installing there. Then the top of page 3, upgrades to 48 volt power plant. The new radio system equipment actually operates, most of it operates on 48 volts DC. It does not operate on 120 or 220 volts AC. The purpose of that is these things operate on the 48 volt is a big battery rack, and not if, but when the power goes out at any given location, the equipment just continues to operate off the batteries. And of course, then the generator would come on and start recharging the batteries. Rather, the plan here, because this is a telecommunications site, they already have a 48 volt power plant there. So we've contacted the vendor who maintains that unit and received a proposal of $4,090 to upgrade the power plant to handle the new equipment. And again, that's, which is a very reasonable cost. Quite frankly, I expect it to be higher than that. This is a case where, again, we're not going to be able to go out for proposals because this is the vendor that supplied and maintained this equipment, and it is the city's vendor for this item. So hopefully that won't create any problems, but
Ray, is that gonna be a whole new rectifier or just an upgrade to the one they have?
It's an upgrade to the one they have.
Okay,
A rectifier is like a module that plugs in, and then we're going to add another a rack of batteries to go in with the batteries that they already have. And I debated putting a picture of that in this report, but I thought there were enough pictures already. So
that's fine.
we've got that item. Next item, it says supply and install cable bridge between the building and the base of the tower. And we need, again, there's a picture on the bottom of page 4 of an existing overhead cable ladder between the AT&T FirstNet building and the tower. We need to do something similar to plan for the county's new equipment. And we've got an estimated cost of $12,000 to $18,000. And, you know, it probably seems like a lot of money. It might be less than that, but frankly, the contractors who do this kind of work are all very busy right now. So over in Boone County, we had to do something similar, and we had a hard time. We found a contractor, but they were very busy, and it took a while to get this work done. So I don't know if anything's changed since then. That was only a year or so ago, but anyway, it needs to be done, and it's on our to-do list.
So it might be an advantage to bid Coon Rapids and
Yes.
Manning at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And this is one that we would put together technical requirements or bid specs, if you will, and put it out for proposals. And then on page 4, just for your information, are some pictures. The upper photo is the top of the tower, and there's a little text box and an arrow that points to the approximate location of where the county's new antennas would go. And then again, down below that is the cable ladder. Are there any questions on the Manning site?
I guess the only question that I have, and this is either for Ray or Jason, the numbers that we're looking at, and with the whole numbers on page 11, Jason, can you tell us what was in the budget? I mean, are we looking at that the 146 number, or are we looking at that 95,000 number?
I can answer that actually, if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Sure.
The budget that we had presented was 150,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Coon Rapids area site. Of course, this FTC has built a brand new tower and has agreed to lease space on the county, on the tower to the county. And, you know, the monthly rate is approximately $1,650, which, while not an insignificant amount of money over 15 years, is still less than the cost of building a new tower and a lot less hassle. So it is an approach that we recommend. There's a couple of things that go with this. Well, there's several things, but the first of all is a lease application form and a fee of $1,250. And that needs to get processed and approved. And there's several elements like that in here. And I guess when I started this discussion, I should have asked the question out up front. One of the things that we're obviously looking for here is approval from this board to move ahead with all these different elements of this project and basically spending money. So we'll need to understand how these kind of things get done. Something like this, this application fee, I don't know if they would, actually the question is, do you require an invoice to pay a fee like this, or something like this, which is an application for lease? How would a check for that amount be generated? I don't know if that came across as a legitimate question or not, but what are your thoughts on that?
And when you do a lease for like a copying machine lease, do you just pay it or they invoice you first? There's no way that this application, this is a federal application, Ray?
No, this is a lease application with this particular company that owns the tower.
From FTC.
Correct.
Can they invoice us for that?
I will ask them. I would hope so.
If they can, that's the preferred way to go, according to our auditor, and I kind of have a tendency to agree with her.
Okay.
If not, we'll have to figure something else out.
Sure. All right. I'll follow up on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
All right. So the second item there is structural analysis of the tower, and I think we've already talked about that a little bit. They have advised us that they will do it internally. They have, being a tower company or company that owns a lot of towers, they have a team that does their own structural analysis, and we would have to pay them for that. And they've told us it'll be $1,750, which, it's right in the ballpark of what we would normally pay.
It will be $1,750 instead of $1,650.
Well, $1,650 is the monthly lease rate.
Oh, okay.
$1,750 is the one-time structural fee.
Gotcha. I misheard that, I guess.
All right. Next item is a shelter for radio system equipment. And the county will be required to place their own shelter at this tower site for the new equipment. As shown in the pictures on page 7, I think. Let's see here. Oh, yeah, page 7. There's already a shelter there. That shelter belongs to AT&T FirstNet, and the county is not allowed to put their equipment in there. And that's, again, pretty standard practice in this business. So we need a shelter. This 10 by 12 or 12 by 12. And these shelters are prefabricated units that are brought in on a truck, and they get set on a concrete pad that needs to be poured at the site. And we have to bring a crane in to pick these things up because they weigh 10 to 15,000 pounds because they're mainly concrete. And what I'm recommending here is that we buy a used one instead of a new one. A new shelter could easily be $50,000, but with the cellular business being what it is and a lot of changes taking place, there's used shelters out there available. And that is what we did at Boone County, and we also did it at Dallas County. So the recommended option is to buy a used shelter. And again, we've got a ballpark of $12,000 to $18,000 for the shelter itself. And there's a small number of vendors that sell these things, and a couple of them are located right in the Midwest in Illinois and Iowa. In Boone County, we issued an RFP, but it's a little challenging, and I hate to keep, I don't know, sounding negative about that process, because I realize it's an important process and part of, county government purchasing. And what I was requesting in here is whether or not there's any way that we could go out and find one of these things and just buy it. And these things move fairly quickly, especially the smaller ones, like we would be looking for. There's a lot of larger ones on the market, but we don't need a larger one. We don't want a larger one. And when I say larger, I'm talking, like 12 by 16 or 12 by 20, because your lease rate is going to be dependent upon the size of this building. So smaller is better. And because of that, the smaller ones get snapped up more quickly. If we have to do an RFP, we'll do it. I mean, that's all there's to it. But we need, the bottom line is we need to be able to move quickly on procuring one of these things. And again, same situation we ran into in Boone County. So
Will there be other vendors? Well, the same vendor that has one of these buildings, will they be a possible bidder on some other part of the project, right?
no,
Okay, well, okay, so it's just specific to this building.
right.
Okay, my next question is there like a barred unit included with this thing, or?
Yes,
Okay, so then our heating and air conditioning is all involved with those dollars.
correct.
No
No.
electrical work, but
Well, there's very little interior electrical work, but there certainly will be exterior electrical work.
correct, to make that barred unit work in an efficient manner. Okay, got it.
Yeah, the other thing is, when we buy these used shelters, yes, they're typically equipped with 2 of the barred units. But we need to take a look at the age and condition of those units.
Correct.
If they're newer, we typically will hire a local HVAC contractor to come in and check it over, clean it up, change the filters, and make sure the pressures are up to where they should be.
Okay.
So, but it is all self-inclusive.
Okay, well, first price kind of scares me for a building, but then when you start throwing those in there, they can add up very quickly.
Yes, it certainly could, but at the time I wrote this plan, there were only 2 of these units of that size that were listed on the websites as available, and it was from 2 different vendors. And the challenge with the RFP process is we put together the RFP, send it to them. In the meantime, those shelters are still for sale to anyone. And we had it happen in Boone where we saw a couple online, we sent the RFP, and by the time they were preparing their response, somebody had bought one of them. So it was a little bit challenging, but
Well, I guess that was my question to you, Ray, is how did you handle that in Boone County? But sounds like you still did an RFP then, right?
we did. And it complicated things, but we got it done. So we'll just have to do the same thing here, I presume.
Courtney will get that number off to you, but I think this is probably the safe bet. I mean, we have to err on the side of caution and keep the public involved.
Understood. All right, so that pretty much covers the shelter. Well, a couple other comments that are in here. The shelter has to be transported obviously by truck. We've got an estimated cost of $3,500 to $5,000. And again, that's in our budget on that last page. And then we need a crane to come in and lift this thing and set it in place. And we're going to need a concrete pad poured to hold this thing and the generator that would be set at the site as well. So we would be doing a separate RFP for the concrete work. And I've checked online, noticed there's several contractors in your area there. So we would do a separate RFP for the concrete work. And the question that usually gets asked at this point in the process is, well, why not hire a general contractor to handle all this stuff, right? You've got concrete work, you've got a crane, you've got electrical work, and most general contractors haven't dealt with these things. And working around a tower site is obviously a different situation than most general contractors have worked with. So that's the reason we've got these done. We're planning to do these somewhat independently, and I hope that's acceptable to everyone here. Moving on, electrical service, generator, and grounding on the lower part of page 6. So we're going to, once the shelter's set in place, we're going to need electrical service to it. And at the site, at the FTC Coon Rapids site, when they built the site, they installed a multimeter panel. So it's got a bunch of empty sockets. And that's obviously a great benefit to any new tenant that's going to add to the site. So the electrical service needs to be brought in underground from this meter panel, as opposed to, you know, all the way from the road and the transformer and all those sorts of things. So we've got that. And then we also need a generator. It'll be an outdoor propane fuel generator for backup power at this site. And again, that would be part of the RFP that we issue for the electrical work at this particular site. And so we've got a total estimated cost for the generator and electrical work of $20,000 to $25,000. And again,
Can I ask you a question on you said that'll be LP back generator. What size of LP tank will there be there?
typically a 500.
Okay, and access to that for refill will be up to us or the tower people, or are we using with somebody else off of that LP source?
It would be the county's responsibility for the propane tank and the refill and so forth. And you know, I don't know how many other propane tanks the county has out there for any facilities or whatever, but assuming you're on some kind of, you know, refill program where they come around and top it off every so often.
Okay, I guess my next question is that big enough that we could sublease to another company off that tower if they would so choose, so we cut down the number of tanks there and just have maybe the one and just break it down on a hourly charge of what the generators run?
Good question. I'm afraid the short answer is probably no.
Okay.
The challenge with that is that you're a public safety entity at this site, and it's unlikely there will be any other public safety at this site.
Okay.
And in fact, I don't know if it's obvious in the pictures or not, but AT&T FirstNet has no generator at this site. And they've designed their system that way. They have large battery racks inside, and they, you know, I don't know what exactly what their technical model or design is in this stuff. I was kind of surprised, but they don't have generators.
Well, they're probably using going to DC and then using inverters to bring it back.
Yes. I'm assuming they got a lot of battery racks in there.
Yeah, and that should last them quite a while. But
Right.
I bet they have an outside exit where they bring a generator and plug it in if they need to.
They do. In fact, you can see it on the side of the building.
Okay. All right,
So,
just a question.
yes. All right. The last element of this site is, again, an ice bridge for the antenna cables between the building and the tower. And we would bundle that with the same requirement for the Manning site for one vendor. Any questions on the Coon Rapids site? All right, hearing nothing, we'll move on to the Lanesboro/Litterdale Tower site. And as discussed several times, we need a site up in the northeast part of the county. And for the sake of today's discussion, we're going to focus on what we'll call the Lanesboro site. And as shown in the photos and so forth, there's an old AT&T paging 150-foot tower that's up there. And we've looked at it. And while we don't know everything about it yet, it does appear to be a good option for a site up in that part of the county. And let's see here. We've looked at the tower and we've taken some pictures of the tower and sent it to some of these tower analysis firms. And we're all pretty much in agreement that it's what we call a Roan SSV. It's probably 40 years old, but they sold thousands of these things around the country. And in fact, you probably used to have one standing next to your courthouse there. And one of the things that we would need to do if we're going to move forward with this is bring in a firm to do an inspection on the tower itself, and then also do a structural analysis of it with our proposed antennas and cables and so forth. But I guess the first question there, or the topic that needs to be discussed, is how to move forward with discussions with the property owner. And I don't know how much detail needs to be dug up here, but in terms of documentation, but it appears that the farmer / landowner has inherited this tower through a termination or default on the lease with AT&T. And of course, we're hoping that he has copies of that stuff. I guess we don't want to, end up in a situation here where all of a sudden AT&T can come back and say, wait a minute, that's our tower. So we're going to have to do a little diligence on the documentation there. But
Right, can I jump in on that?
yes, please.
We did work with the recorder's office. We did find the original recording where the land was actually, I think, purchased with a first right of refusal, or some sort of an agreement to go back to the landowner. And then we also found the other recording where it showed that AT&T quitclaim deeded it back to the farmer. So
Thank you.
we do have that located, and we can get it from them anytime.
Excellent. Thank you, Jason. I think you and I had talked about that, but I forgot about that. So thank you. So with that in mind, there needs to be further discussion with the landowner there about either leasing or purchasing it, and maybe it'd be purchasing the tower and leasing it, the land space from him or something. So we haven't gone any further with that until we, got to this point in the process and had the discussion with the board here.
Ray, when you do make that run up there to visit with him, the sheriff knows him, so that might be a good thing. Maybe both of you could go up together and do
Actually, Jason and the sheriff, I think, met with him already. Is that correct?
You went up and
Okay,
discussed different options with him.
okay, very good.
I'll add here too that I think that the thing to do here is that we need to know before we take those discussions any further that the tower will pass structural and physical analysis to make sure that we can go on it. No sense in talking to him about leasing it if it's not going to work. So Ray, we've discussed this also, that we need to get that structural and that inspection done so that we know that it's viable. And if it's viable, then we can continue that discussion forward with him. I think he would prefer to retain ownership of things and lease it, but he also floated the idea of a purchase so long as there was a first right of refusal to him or his heirs once the county was wanting to dispose of the property.
Assuming that this does pass the structural analysis and it is capable of being used, are we to approach the owner with a sale price and versus a lease option, or is he going to present us? How is that going to transpire?
I don't know. I think he was pretty excited with the idea that it would be put to good use. He's supportive of public safety. So I think we would just kind of have a gentleman's discussion about that first and see, once we were able to say, well, this is the condition, or maybe there's a work needed in this area on the tower or something. Once we have all that information, we could, I think, sit down with him, the sheriff and I, and maybe Ray, and we can have that conversation with him and say, what's it worth, or what's he feel comfortable with, and then bring that figure to the board to see if it's acceptable.
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Ray, I have a question for you. Now, knowing that we could make this analysis and it may not pass, and that's money that's just gone, do you think the value of having that site is worth the risk of throwing that money basically away?
Good question. And I would say yes. You know, in the top of page 9, we talk about the structural analysis as well as the inspection. And we've got a cost estimate of $3,600 to $4,300. And I think it's a good investment.
Okay. Okay.
You know, the cost of building a tower, as you've seen previously,
Exactly.
expensive.
That, or go back to the Litterdale Tower, which doesn't give us quite as good a coverage. And I just think the value that might be there, but I know that that's a risk that we are running.
Yes, yes, it is. You know, unfortunately, with this kind of work and what we're doing here, there's always going to be some element of risk. The challenge is to minimize it in terms of cost.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Do we have a lease option or a bid from Breda Telephone Company for fair comparison?
Yes, they gave us a monthly. Gosh, what was that number, Jason? I don't have it in front of me here.
Yeah, I think that was quite high, wasn't it?
It was, and in fact, that's one of the reasons we went looking for alternatives.
Would they reconsider their current bid now that there's some possible competition in the area?
Well, one of the challenges with the Litterdale site is that tower does not appear to be much different than the one we're looking at up at Lanesboro, and they've already got a bunch of stuff on it. So there could be some structural challenges there. But yeah, they wanted, I want to say it was $1,100 a month.
Okay.
Nope, Jason's
A
higher.
little higher than that.
Ray, is it my understanding that we get better coverage with the Lanesboro Tower even over towards Breda? Am I right in that?
Yes, you know, one of the challenges with the Breda or the Litterdale site is that it wasn't really far enough away from Carroll. We wanted something a little northeast, and that Lanesboro site we think is actually a better location.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Jason, did you have something to add?
Hope you covered it. Thank you.
Okay. So at Lanesboro, there is a building there that was previously used by AT&T for their radio equipment. And, you know, it's a cement block building with what appears to be a wood roof of some kind. And we don't know what the inside of this place looks like. And nobody has a key. So the next step is to cut the lock, and it's a deadbolt. So we'd have to, you know, try and get creative without damaging the steel door to get inside to see what the thing looks like. And it did not have any kind of HVAC system on it. It had just like fresh air vent to bring in. And we could kind of see up in there, and we're guessing critters have crawled into this building probably and nested in there over time. So we have no idea what it looks like, what kind of shape the roof is in, and so forth. So once we've had a further further discussion with the landowner, Jason has talked to him, and I think he's at the point where, with this board's approval, we'll go ahead and cut the lock off the door and see what we got to work with in there. Is that a fair statement, Jason?
Yeah, I think so. In our conversations that you and I had, Ray, was also that no need to go do damage to his door to get into the building if the tower's not going to pass structural. That tower's the cream of the site. The shelters, hopefully we can use it and save money there, but getting things to pass the analysis on the tower is where this kind of the next first step. And then if that works out, then yeah, we can. I think we'd ask him to cut the lock. It's it's his building. And I think he's fine with doing that, but
Yeah. And again, it's a deadbolt, so I guess Jason and I have talked about when the time comes, maybe we could use some kind of, cutoff wheel or something to cut the deadbolt between the jamb and get the door open, and you could replace the deadbolt later and not wreck the door. So something like that. Assuming the building is sound, we've got, some money in here to do some upgrades to the building and so forth. And we would want to add, the BART or Marvair HVAC units to that building, which are fairly simple. We've done that at some other places, and you cut 2 holes in the walls and you mount the thing on the side and hook up the electrical and the thermostat. So we've got, again, money in the budget here for all those things. And then lastly, for that site is the electrical service. Obviously, it had electrical service at some point in the past that's been disconnected, so we'd have to get service reestablished for the site. The other thing is, we mentioned in here, we're not planning for a generator at this site. As we talked about at Manning, the radio equipment operates on 48-volt DC power plants. Well, in the original Motorola equipment order, we did order a 48-volt power plant for Manning, which we now don't need. The plan would be to bring that extra power plant to this site and put it in place alongside with the power plant that was ordered for this site. So there basically be 2 racks of batteries at this site. And being as this is I hate to use the word secondary site, but it's not one of the primary sites in the system. With 2 battery racks, this site would operate for a long time without having a generator. And we think that would be a very cost-effective solution there.
Ray, would you look at putting a outside receptacle for a generator on it?
We certainly could. Absolutely.
That's something that, yeah. Two sets of batteries will last a long time.
Well, and the other thing is, in the not to get too deep on the technical stuff, without with this particular, well, all the sites in the system, to a certain extent, will only have radio traffic if there's a unit within range of the site. 90, we'll call it 90% of the time. That's the way they work. So if there's nobody using the site up in this area, the battery consumption and power draw would be very low. So we think that's a reasonable solution as opposed to sites that are in more populated areas. All right. Any questions about that site? All right.
I have a question. On the Coon Rapids side, if we put the building in there and we locate it on, is that on their property or is it on the landowner's property? Who's the landowner for that site?
It would be the FTC site owner's property.
Okay, so that building remain our property, or is it if we abandon it, or do we remove it, or what's the process there, Ray?
You would retain ownership of the building, included in the lease agreement. In terms of, termination or abandonment or whatever, I haven't seen their lease agreement. We've asked for a copy of their lease, their standard lease, but they won't give it to us until we fill out the application form. So that's a good question. I don't have the final answer. I assume the biggest question is, if the county no longer needs the site, are you required to remove the shelter?
Right.
Okay. Don't have the answer to that. I guess we'll find out once we see their lease.
Okay.
All right. Summary and budget. So you go to the page 11 with all the numbers on it there. We've provided a minimum and maximum estimated cost for all these elements, of all this work we've discussed here. And again, the original project budget that we provided back in September had a 150,000 for these things. So I think we should be good. We got a lot of variables here as well, but in the end, we think it should all work out within budget. So basically, we're seeking this board's approval to move forward with this work and frankly, spending some of this money from the project. And I'll open it up for questions.
I have one question. I see there's an application fee from Coon Rapids. Is every tower site going to be charging that, or is it just Coon Rapids?
Just Coon Rapids.
And why is that?
Well, because that's the only commercially owned tower site that we're dealing with.
Okay.
Manning, it's a city entity and they're, I guess we'll call them friends of the county, so they're not concerned about that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ray, what else do you need from us? You need Courtney will find out a dollar amount for you and email that to you. You're looking for approval to send RFPs, to start spending some of this money that has been earmarked for this project?
Yes, and I don't know if you need a motion and at the meeting here today to move forward with this, or if that's already been covered by some previous approval of the project.
It may have been covered before, but I think it'd probably be appropriate to go ahead and do it again. Just so everybody has I think we have a lot better understanding now of exactly what's going to happen here. Is that the wishes of the board?
Yeah, before we vote on this, Ray, Neil Bach here, do you have any time frame? I'm particularly interested in the structural analysis being done at the Lanesboro site.
That could be done within, well, I was going to say 2 to 3 weeks, with this new world order we're operating under for the time being. I still think it could probably get done in 30 days.
So in this whole process right now, are we on schedule, or are we behind, or what is the situation?
I would say we're generally on schedule. Jason, do you want to weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's never moves as fast as I would like it to, but no, I think we're doing okay. Originally, we had planned to be doing this work in the spring, and here the spring is, and we want to start the work. So I was going to add too, I think the kind of the process I would envision is we would submit RFPs on behalf of the county, hopefully get those responses in short order. And at that next week's meeting, I could bring those RFPs, Ray and I'll look them over, make sure that there's no concerns with any of the responses, and present them to the board for approval, as soon as we get them, kind of as they come in. So that we can get the work rolling.
We would, right here, we would do, there's some things that we want to do first on, some of these structural and so forth type of things, and perhaps electrical.
I probably need to do the courthouse work and the RFPs for site evaluations. Probably
Cool.
The first two things that we need to jump through, because there's no sense of moving on any of them if one of them falls, one of them fails. So
Correct.
So Rich, are you looking for a motion to proceed with this project, or is that what you're after?
I think a motion on this, and I think we'll start off with the motion to proceed, but we'll start off with the courthouse work and the RFPs for site analysis payment, we'll start off with spending that money, and then when they come back, then we can see that, yes, those are gonna work, and then we can approve them and then move on with the rest? Well, we won't know what, until the RFPs are done, so. Is that how you guys wanna do it, or you wanna just do the whole thing and let them get started? I kinda like maybe see the money go out a little bit at a time, but. Neil, you're gonna have to mute. Neil, you're gonna have to mute yourself. There you go.
We'll have to, I think the motion should read to proceed as budgeted.
I tend to agree with that. I don't know that, I mean, we basically approved this project through our, already, just that we're kind of formalizing some of the final ends of it. I think we just approve the whole thing as a plan, and that we're, do it that way myself. I think, and to your concern, Rich, I think the money will be divvied out over time anyway. This is not all going to happen at one time.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and I'm okay with, that's why I asked the original question about, what was budgeted for this. And Ray did say $150,000, so that if the motion would include that dollar amount, I would be okay with that and let them go ahead and get this thing rolling. Is that kind of what you're thinking? Is that kind of what you're thinking, Gene?
Yeah, I think so. We could, I don't know, we could, maybe don't have to specify those dollar amounts, but specify this document, maybe more than anything. Then we can put the ranges in, or maybe that'd be best. Put them ranges, estimate total cost from $95,900 to a budget amount of $150,000.
Or just put a cap on it.
Yeah, we can do that too.
Steph, Neil.
What's anybody else think?
I'm agreeing with you guys too. I mean, we already kind of went through this once, and I appreciate the updates and following it, but I agree with you guys as well. The cap's not a bad idea either.
So you think in this motion it should be capped at, we obviously have a chart here. If anything looks like it's over the maximum, then to bring it back, and other than that, everything else should just. Does that make sense?
I think that, yeah.
Now, it's not the total max, it's just the max on each piece. I mean, if something would go way out of whack on just one particular piece, we'd like to hear why and what our alternatives are.
Well, we'll know that when the RFPs come in. They can
Yeah,
see before actually spending any money, they should be able to know that we got some problems.
Something went wrong, yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question for clarification? Is the board going to want each RFP response group? If we one RFP, we get 2-3 responses or however many. Do you want each response to be brought for approval for selection, or take the low bid on everything, or how does the board want us to proceed when we get those responses back?
Well, I would say just take the low bid on anything. I don't think you have to bring anything back. I mean, we're doing the RFPs because we want transparency, and we want a bid process of some kind. And I would be okay with you guys just moving ahead as long as it looks like the project's going to be within budget.
Right here.
Of course, Jason, there could be a little bit of a controversy in addition to the bid price in the RFPs. If there's any question involved, I'd certainly want you to bring that to the board.
Sure. I mean, I could imagine there'd be a situation where we might get a low bid that we don't feel is responsive, or we lost Ray. We could get a bid that we look at it and go, well, I don't think this is a responsible bid from the contractor, and might need to say, hey, we shouldn't take the low one because, you know, they, for whatever reason, we've decided that they wouldn't be a good contractor. Right, Ray? I mean, we could imagine a situation like that.
Yeah, and the comment I was going to make along with that is, fortunately, this board meets weekly, correct?
Correct.
Which expedites things. I mean, there's a lot of county boards that only meet, twice a month, like typical, I think. So, and for any given element that we're obtaining proposals, it's no big extra effort to come forward and say, we received 2, received 3 from so-and-so, here's the pricing and here's the one we recommend, which is, not too difficult to do. So I think that'd be a good approach.
Well, and I think there may be some cases, particularly with where you got local vendors that have been working on it. It may be to our advantage to work with them too. That's something that you have to look at each situation.
Okay, so you guys want to make a motion that's not clear as mud for Courtney to write down?
I'll give it a try.
Sure.
I move to approve the Ray Freeman proposal as budgeted, estimated at $95,990.
I thought the budgeted amount was 150.
Yes, 150.
Yeah, the budgeted amount is 150.
If you want to have the budgeted amount instead of the estimated amount, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I think, Neil, that what you quoted there is exactly estimate amount minimum. He's got a minimum and a maximum. So I think I would suggest we go with 150,000.
Okay,
Is that okay with you, Neil?
that's fine. I just wanted a number, and the board wanted a number in there, and I was using the estimated amount instead of the budgeted amount, which is what, $146,390.
That's the high estimate.
That's the high.
budget.
Oh, okay. The budgeted amount was what, 150?
The total
Yes.
budget was 150, but the numbers came in at 146,390, but I'm sure there's a variable on there because of time too, so. And the new world we're living in.
Okay, I'll try this again then. I'll move to approve the Ray Freeman proposal as budgeted. Period.
Everybody okay there?
That's nice and short and sweet, and I'll second that.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. And we'll call for the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? There's your answers.
I have a question.
Courtney has one question.
How do you plan on paying that? It's not in the county.
Jason?
It's not his either.
Sorry, what was the question? I couldn't hear it.
Well, it's not in the county budget for this year.
Okay.
Any proposals?
No, I mean, you're kind of putting me on the spot here, but this was originally on their original proposal. This money was in, or this work was part of the Motorola proposal. It was pulled out as a cost savings measure. I thought it was being put into the county budget when you guys were doing your budgeting. It was, I guess, brought up to the board several times. I thought it was put in there somewhere, or I thought the board planned to do a budget amendment.
Probably lost money is the only place we have any other options.
Even if we do budget for in 21, we're going to be spending money in 20.
Right.
So that my question is.
Yeah. Yeah, the question is even if it is in next year's budget, this is still gonna be spent this year. So we're probably either gonna have to do a budget amendment or, what particular place would you, that Courtney to look for money?
So Courtney, you're worried about this money being spent yet this current year?
Yes, and we'd have to do a budget amendment and probably remove it from the lost funds that we have. Is that the attempt here?
Well, I think if we conceivably, I think, and Ray can answer this, but most of this money is going to be spent after the beginning of our July 1st, I would say. We're just getting RFPs right now. Am I right on that, Ray?
I'd
It's
say it's
possible that up to half of it could be spent before July 1st.
I'd say it's 50-50 because we could get the building bought at any day. We could do maybe some concrete work someplace at any given moment. So yeah, it's going to be about half and half, I would assume.
I'd agree.
Neil's going to say something. No, he's not. I guess I'm just gonna have to say, or I think it's gonna have to come out of lost money for right now. We'll have to do budget amendments for what happens this year and we'll have to do some dancing around for next year budget because we won't be there either. So that'll have to be cleaned up and probably in a budget amendment.
Well, it would have been pretty difficult to get this in the budget of the current year. I mean, we would have had to have this approved basically almost a year and how many months ago. So, you know, I understand that it's not in this year's budget. We never discussed this prior to this year's budget.
No, correct, Dean. Maybe we had talked briefly about it, but that was it. There was really no thought of going forward
Right.
at that time. But yeah, in next year's budget, I don't know why we didn't snag that, but we did it. So I guess where the money's going to come from and gives Courtney an idea of how she's going to have to attack it, getting it paid and getting a budget amendments done and those things.
Of course, the ESX program was in next year's budget, correct?
Just
Courtney?
The lease payment was, but this was removed from that lease payment.
Okay, so there's none of this that was in next year's budget at all?
No,
The 21 budget?
no.
Okay.
So that's the only proposal I think way we can go. I don't see any other place. Jason doesn't have it in his budget and he's covering whatever else he can cover anyway. So I don't think we have any other choice but to do that.
I tend to agree with you, Rich. I think that's what our only choice is, to make a
That guy,
budget.
why is he in here?
You gotta check.
Okay. Just wondering how he got in here. You said, Gene, you just think this very same thing I do? I mean, there's the only way around it. So we'll just have to do budget amendments on a timely fashion to keep money in her pocket for it. Neil, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we could take it from lost money and continue the project as planned and then repay the lost fund when funds become available.
Okay.
And
Steph?
the amount of the budget amendment is not known, a lot of these things.
Right.
I agree.
Okay. Courtney.
Yeah, it's what we're going to have to do to move it forward.
Yep. Okay. Very good.
I have one more question.
Courtney has one more question.
future, who's gonna be paying those monthly lease payments? Is that the county or is that E911?
The monthly lease payments in the future, is that your board, Jason?
No, that's the county's budget. E911 is paying the ongoing maintenance fee, which will be
Correct?
around figure $100,000 a year. So that's what's budgeted for at 911 is to pay the maintenance fee on it, but the lease is paying for the actual development, production, or building of the infrastructure and the equipment. The original purchase was
So
financed by the county as a lease.
the lease on the 3 towers will be up to our budget process.
Yes, I think so. Because that again stems from the original proposal included greenfield sites. We've identified, one greenfield site, I guess. But that was the discussion that we've had previously, is that that's all part and parcel of the county's expenses.
You're saying that we did have this discussion before.
Yeah, we've discussed I think we've discussed, I recollect that we have discussed that the lease payments and the lease amounts would be county expenses.
Ray, do you know approximately when would these lease payments start? Approximately the first of the year?
It would be before that. Typically, the lease would start at the time you start installing equipment at the sites.
Okay. So it could happen June 1st to, yeah. I wouldn't think much before that, but it's good. It could be.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Still clear as mud.
Well, it makes a big difference if we're paying a lease payment in June or we're paying one in July.
Right. Okay, because you've got to pull out of this year's budget for a budget amendment. And then July, okay. Okay. Any other discussion or questions on this? If not, we're going to allow Ray to get out of here and Jason to get out of here, and we'll move on with other business.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ray. And
Thanks,
Jason.
Ray. Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Ray.
Very well.
Okay. The board, would you like to go up and do Zach, secondary roads? Is that where you choose to go?
Yes.
All right, back up to the top.
Okay, I got 3 utility permits today. I sent out kind of a summary so you kind of knew what they were, so I didn't have to talk quite as much about this stuff. But the first permit was for West Central Rural Iowa Water, just doing a bore across the road through 230th Street for a service line for a property. I don't see any issues with it. Have any questions on that one?
No, I didn't.
Neil's talking, but he's muted again. He'll figure it out. There you go.
Neil, you wanted to say something, but you're.
Yeah, that was the one between section 5 and 8 Washington Township.
That's correct.
Okay. I have no question or problems there.
You want these approved separately, Zach?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion on that one then.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for that particular piece. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Number 2 is another West Central Iowa Rural Water. This is a water line expansion to basically serve the city of Dedham. Basically, they're going about approximately 4 miles from their existing line to get into the city of Dedham. They are using private property for most of it, but there's about 8 locations where they either have to bore underneath our road or parallel on our right of way to avoid a acreage or other farm place or building site. We've driven the route. I don't think there's going to be any issues with those areas. Obviously, they'll have to get a separate permit for crossing 141 from the DOT, but
I was gonna ask you, are there other permits for Highway 161 through there also? I see they're paralleling it.
no, I don't think so. I think that's basically ours. It's old 161. So
Okay.
that's ours to take care of at this point. That's just what they're calling it.
Okay,
Well, and the way I read that, aren't they, most of the stuff is in the private right of way?
That's correct. The majority of it is in the right or in the private property. The only areas are where they're boring underneath our road or going in front of an acreage or a building site where there's trees or other items in the way.
And you said, Zach, that you didn't see any problem with it at all.
No, I think it's going to be fine. They're going to bore driveways and such. I don't think there's going to be any issues with what they're trying to accomplish.
I'll make a motion to approve that permit.
I'll
I'll
second.
second it.
we have a motion by Dean, seconded by Stephanie. All those, and any more discussion on that permit? All those in favor say aye,
Aye.
Aye.
and opposed. Motion carries on that one.
Thank you. Third one is for Mid-American Energy, and this is rebuilding some overhead power lines south of Dedham, and also upgrading City of Dedham from 2-phase to 3-phase power. Along the same area going south of Dedham, and then a small stretch on 230th Street going east of that old 161 over to 141. Most of or a good chunk of this is basically replacing existing poles with new poles and new line. There's a couple areas where they are actually switching from one side of the road to the other, and that's south of 141 along 161. There's a stretch where they're wanting to swap sides. I do not know the reason for that. I did not get a hold of them about the reason why they're switching, but I don't really see any issue with it.
I'll make a motion to approve the permit.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and opposed. Motion carries.
Thank you. I don't know if it works, Rich, if you can just sign the signature page of those, and maybe Courtney can email those to me, and then I can send them from there, send them off from there.
We'll figure it out, or I can stop out, either one.
Either way is fine. I'm good with that.
All right, I may just stop out.
Sounds good. Maybe we'll unlock the door for you.
I'll call you.
Second project updates. The Manning Bridge, we poured the deck last Tuesday. Went very well. Broke the beam this morning and had good strength on it. They're hopefully going to be pouring the open rail tomorrow or Wednesday. So moving right along, full steam ahead. Still got some fence work to do up on the Bruggeman Bridge. Otherwise, that has been opened and been being used. Haven't had any issues with that from what I'm aware of. That's kind of
Zach, you didn't have any trouble with that fencing issue?
Go ahead again, Dean. I think they both walked on each other.
Zach, you didn't have any trouble with that fencing issue?
No. The guys met with both property owners up there, and I think they got a plan. It's just a matter of we haven't been able to get up there yet to install it. So, but I think
Okay, good.
we got a plan put together. We should be good to go. Next one is just a couple things on department update. We did receive that motor grader last Thursday, so we're working on getting radio put in and getting our stuff done to it to get it put in service. So that has been received. A couple other little things. Obviously, we're kind of holding off on from a staff update, holding off on advertising for the administrative assistant position until some of this stuff settles down, I guess. Probably not the best time to try to hold interviews and everything else. So I think Becky's willing to work with us as well if it does extend out a little bit, but just kind of wait and see approach and see how things go here the next month or two. And then thirdly, just trying to focus on our maintenance projects we completed with staff being independent. If there's things that we have to be together in a group to work on things, we're trying to push those off unless they're a necessity. Just trying to continue to haul gravel or haul rock or do other projects where we're working independently with everyone to try to keep as much distance as we can.
Okay.
I think that's all I got unless you have any other questions for me.
Zach, let me know when you get a moment to go down and look at that tile district, and maybe I'll meet you down there.
Will do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Zach, Neil Bach here, and I lost contact between the end of utility permits and you're talking about some fence. I do want to state that I sent each of the supervisors a couple of pictures of the bridge project, the deck that's currently is poured. And I also ran across a deal where they were putting up a pole. It was communication pole and a ditch in the right of way in Crawford County, and I sent that to the supervisors as well.
Oh, is that the Weiss Bridge? Okay, I haven't opened it yet. Okay, very good. Thank you, Courtney. Okay, nothing else for Zach. Have a good day. Thanks.
Zach.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care, Zach.
You're gonna hang around for the COVID?
Thank you.
Yes, I do plan on hanging on for that.
Okay, very good. And I don't know when she's coming, but we'll.
I spoke with Sarah. She's not going to be able to make it today, but she will give a board update as after the governor does her press release at 2:30.
But she'll send us the emails and things then?
Yeah. And she reached out to you too, Dean, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll drop her update. So there you go, Zach. Well, if there's anything important, we'll send the email off to you also.
My question,
Great.
question about the COVID-19, I know you guys received that email this past weekend about not allowing access down to some of our essential needs like the 911 and the jail area. Have we made a decision there, or Courtney, have you guys already implemented that?
I talked to Courtney a little bit about it this morning. There's not a lot of floor to floor interaction, even though we have a 911 person sitting in here now. But there's not been a lot of interaction. Dalton or whoever's working IT for that week is probably the floor to floor bouncer, or Zach. So those are probably the two people that we have to watch. And I guess as long as they're passing their thermometer test in the morning and then at noon, I think we should be pretty good. But I think everybody understands to kind of stay on your own floor. So That's a very good question, though. All right, let's go to the jail project. Change order number 2, R.
So I received this from Shai Hattery,
Yes.
and they're asking for the chairman to sign it and forward it back. So
Okay.
obviously, you're gonna be approving the additional $1,060 for this project.
Okay. Okay, did you guys receive a copy of that from Shive Hattery? And on the back, there's a document for the change order. And this is on the agenda for me to sign. And there is going to be a $40,060 addition. Did you catch that part?
Yeah, I did get it. I can't seem to find it right now, but it's, looks like it's all stuff that was, a lot of it's due to the fact that stuff they had to find on, that they couldn't get things. I really don't have a problem with it.
Basically asked me, can the electrical room relocation, it's like $10,000. Do you know why they're relocating the electrical room or?
Basically that, they're moving the generator outside. So on top of the additional budget, it was $10,000 to move it, but there's probably $40,000 or $50,000 savings because they're not gonna have the interior room. It just didn't show up on paper
I
like
think we
that.
X'd out 64 and
Something
put
like
back
that.
10 back
Yeah,
in, if
something.
I remember right.
It just doesn't show up on paper.
Okay, so can we, any more discussion on this before we move any further? Okay, I guess we need a motion for me to authorize to sign this and so she can send it back to Shive.
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for me to authorize me to sign this and send it back to Shive Hattery for this change order O2R. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, Neil Bach here. I want to note that this certainly does not include the elevator that we, as a board, voted to approve the last meeting.
No, I do not believe it does. No, I do not believe it does, Neil. Okay. What was that for then? Oh, that was, I see, never mind. Just all electrical. Okay. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the discussion of the primary election. Courtney's got a couple, she's got a plan or some questions about a plan.
I just wanted to kind of let the board know, I'm thinking about maybe reducing our polling places for the primary. There's several counties that are reducing polling places. For example, Buena Vista County normally has 11 precincts and they're going down to 2. We have 13. My concern is being able to, not so much getting people in a small place, it's finding people to work. Most of our election workers are 65 and older. And so right now I'm just kind of throwing the idea around of maybe combining some precincts just so I don't have to find as many workers. The primary generally has a low turnout. I went back and I be able to find it. went back and looked at 2016, which would be comparable because it was also a presidential. Carroll County had 1,350 votes in that election, about a 9% turnout. A majority of those votes came from Carroll. Just a low turnout. We only had 192 absentee voters, less than 200. So while we aren't really sure what's going to happen in June at this point, hopefully everything's back to normal, but I have to plan now for this. Right now is when I need to be lining up my workers, lining up my polling places, and getting supplies ordered. I haven't made any decisions, but I'm certainly open to suggestions from the board, because I know by combining precincts, we're going to have people that aren't happy. But my main concern is just finding workers because of what's going on now. I have a feeling if I start sending out my postcards like I normally do at this time of year, I'm going to have people saying no way, even though it's not till June. So I just wanted to let you guys know where I'm at with this and look for any suggestions if you have any, or that's basically, I just wanted to touch base on that.
Well, we are asking probably the highest risk people to help participate. So I think that Courtney's probably right on point on this. I think there'd be a lot of people that probably will not be extremely happy about doing this. I don't know.
So Courtney, are you looking just for the primary right now is what you're looking at more than anything?
Yes.
Would we be wise just to do a total? And I guess I appreciate where you're coming from, and I think this thing is gonna tail on for a long time. I've got a feeling. I see that through part of the stimulus package that there was approved the other day, there's 400 million put in there for possibly for the election in June, for particularly for mailing. I'm wondering if we shouldn't just go ahead and do all total absentees in this primary.
We don't have the authority to have it all done by mail. We can encourage it. You know, we could mail requests to the smaller communities that may not have a polling place. We could do all that, but we're still required to have polling places, and we're still required to have absentee voting in the auditor's office. That starts on May 4th. So as of right now, we'll be letting people into the courthouse on May 4th to absentee vote, unless something changes between now and then.
Courtney, do you have any idea what you would probably reduce the polling places to? Have you got any kind of plan?
Well, this is just one that I thought of. It's not set in stone, so I don't want anybody getting upset, but I just looked. Right now we have 13. Obviously, our biggest precincts are in Carroll because of population. I would not change the Carroll precincts. They do a good job of handling who they have. I thought about Arcadia, Wheatland, and Washington Roselle. Breda usually has a pretty good turnout for a smaller community, and I thought if there was a way to combine Halber, Arcadia, and Breda, whether you do it in Arcadia, that's more central to the two. That was one thought. Thought about Litterdale, maybe going to Glidden, and maybe Dedham going to Coon, and maybe Templeton going to Manning. That's just some thoughts based on voter turnout. You know, they have the fewest number of people, fewest number of voters, but I don't know at this point. So that's just a thought.
She's also trapped with the in courthouse voting issue of you want people to be able to vote here, but if this continues, we can't allow traffic very far into the building. So we're going to have to think about a plan there. how we're going to accomplish that one. I hope we're not still in that position, but I think we need to guard against it. We certainly could be.
And then you also have to look at, if you did a ton more absentees than you normally do, there's a lot of cost involved in that.
Yes.
And, you know, I did not budget to mail out 5,000 absentee ballots for the primary election, because last time I mailed out 200.
We could
So
see $3,000 to $5,000 difference.
pretty expensive, it does. But I want to promote it as much as we can, because I want people.
Well, that's why I mentioned that stimulus bill, there was money in there for that. I'm affiliate to the governor about this, and you know, I'm not crazy about open it if we're still in the same situation we are now.
So Gene,
Efforts are due, but we also back up for voting going on in the courthouse.
Gene, you cut out a lot there. You want to try it again?
Oh, I said that part of that stimulus package, I seen there was 400 million in there for the purpose of paying for mailings in absentee ballots. But I think Courtney should be talking with her affiliate, and they should be talking to the governor about this situation. I am not crazy about having us having to open up the courthouse back to absentee balloting or voting if we are still in the same situation we are at now. And then we just wasted all our time and effort trying to protect our staff and the public in the courthouse now.
And we are all talking about this in groups, and you're saying exactly what a lot of the auditors are saying. You know, our courthouses are close to the public, but yet you want us to open it up for voting. You're defeating the purpose of keeping our essential needs workers isolated and being able to come into work. So it is being talked about. Absolutely.
It probably wouldn't hurt to talk to your legislator too about it, so they can get their feet square what they want to do.
And I think I did see in the news, and can only watch about so much of this news anymore. But I think I seen in the news where one governor did delay their primary date.
Yeah, I think that would probably be a pretty good option if you could delay it 30 days. I mean, if you could push it back, you know, into July. Mailing is obviously the best option if we can accomplish that.
Yeah, it's more expensive, but it's the safest.
I agree with everything. Absentee ballots is absolutely the best. And as soon as voters are able to vote absentee, I think that should be voted or promoted. It's kind of on both sides, where the public as well as the county is dealing with this issue. So I think we should get good cooperation on absentee ballots. And as soon as people can vote absentee, that needs to be advertised.
Okay, well, keep everything in mind. I'm sure that this will come up again, and Courtney will do a little checking. And like I said, if you can visit with your legislator and see if you can push them down the road a little bit to get in contact with the governor and make a decision. I know this is something that's not a hot button on her plate, but it's something that's going to have to get covered somewhere along the way.
How soon do you have to make a decision on this, Courtney?
Well, I need to get my ballots ordered. Normally now is when I'm getting my workers lined up and reserving my polling places. So I at least need to decide what polling places I'm going to have open. We're going to strongly encourage the vote by mail. The fewer the polling places, the better. Then the argument was made, well, if you have more people in a confined space. There could be some truth to that. So kind of at a loss of what to do right now, and I don't know that a lot of counties are sure. The gist I'm getting from them is a lot of them are reducing their polling places. Not because they're worried about people being, 6 feet apart from each other. They're doing it because they can't find people to work. Nobody wants to work, and I don't blame them. If I was 70, I wouldn't want to be working an election from 7 in the morning to 9 at night, coming into contact with 200 or 300 people. I wouldn't. So.
Well, I think this remains a fluid situation, this whole COVID thing, and we'll know more. But I don't know what to tell you, Courtney, as far as ordering ballots. I guess that's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, I plan on ordering as many as I normally would. The actual ballots are pretty reasonably priced. They're not super expensive. So, I mean, if I order too many, it's not the end of the world.
You're going to be increased postage, increased letter of envelopes,
Yeah.
those kind of things.
And I have put a little bit more money in the postage line, but I'm working on a budget amendment, and I'm asking for some money for postage because I don't know that we're going to have a ton of them. We only had 200 in 2016, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
We could-
so hard to guess.
I know. This is a tough one. Okay, keep it in mind.
Yeah, this is something that we might want to put on the agenda
Again,
probably every meeting until we get something actually nailed down.
and I think we'll probably just have we'll do an election update and maybe we'll know more in a week. Maybe.
Well, and it could be part of the COVID-19 discussion because it's all stemming from that.
Right,
too,
right. Okay. Just as long as keep everybody aware, do what you can, and when you hear things, let us know. Let Courtney know as soon as you can. Okay, the next thing up is some manure management, the annual updates. We'll go through them. We have Hillside. There's Rodney Henner's section 30 of Arcadia. That's a change of crop rotation and manure analysis. PI 364, Prestige Farms of Iowa in section 7 of Wheatland, no change. Twin Rivers Pork, section 22, Arcadia, crop rotation and manure out analysis. Woodford Creek Farms, section 9 of Union, no change. Mark Heidoff, section 24 of Roselle, is a new 4-year plan with change of rotation and manure analysis. Committee reports, do we want to attack those? Who wants to go first?
I'll start, Neil Block, and I'll be brief. First of all, I forwarded to Courtney pictures of the bridge, the Weiss Bridge, which is the deck support. I visited that yesterday. I also ran across a pole which is up and appears to be a communication pole. They're working on it yesterday. I took a picture of that since we had quite a bit of discussion on that. One meeting I did have by telephone Tuesday, March 24th, the RSVP and foster grandparent, and they've since they do have a very susceptible membership with both RSVP and the foster grandparent, they pulled the volunteers at least until the end of April. Travel suspended till the end of May. They've had a lot of cancellations. The joint fundraising event, National Service Day recognition, has been canceled. They had 4 new foster grandparents, which is good. Up 12 now. Unfortunately, they are not working at this time. And on February 20th, they had the RSVP legislative event. That's all I have for committee reports. And this week's meeting with Monday or this afternoon with Rolling Hills has been moved up until April.
Okay, this is Gene Miners. I'll go next. Last week I had a conference call with CADC and their business people in Carroll. They basically had SBA. Mrs. Tiefenthaler was there on the line with us. Talked about the different programs that are being offered through SBA. One in particular for people that have over 2 people up to 50 people, and they have grants for that up from 5,000 to 25,000. And then they talked about a new one that just came out that was for sole proprietor with no employees, and that they can are from 5,000 up to $10,000 on that. So they were just giving them an update, what was available and where they could get it from and stuff like that. And then Wednesday was our board meeting. And then on Friday, I had a Yes Center board meeting. We did by phone conference call. We went through the financials and approved the payables. Our biggest thing was that we spent a lot of time reviewing policies and procedures on the COVID-19 policies and procedures, and we did adopt a bunch of those. And one day they were up to as high as 11 kids in there. We averaged 9.3 last month, and as of Friday there was only 4 in there. But they do think that these numbers are going to keep on the high side throughout this whole period and stuff like that, because the state is locking down their training schools. And some of these people will be moving out to other detention centers. This week, I really don't have anything on the agenda right now. And last week, I did drive out towards the bridge pour when they were finished and looked at another drainage issue south of Manning. That's my report.
I can go next. I didn't have much last week, just the meeting on Wednesday and the emergency coalition meeting on Friday. I don't know that there was anything new that anybody doesn't know about already. So I don't have anything really to report. Don't have anything on the agenda right now, but that's pretty fluid. It'll probably change. That's it.
Okay, I'll go. Again, along with everybody else, the meetings Wednesday and Thursday, or Friday, the coalition meeting on Friday. Took a couple emails with tile issues and working with Zach on setting up times to go work on those. And then working hand in hand closely with Nikki at the daycare, trying to decide how they're gonna charge going forward. Obviously with some parents being at home, they can keep their kids at home. There are some parents that are still utilizing the daycare, and they're trying to keep it down to the 10 children in each room. And as of right now, there are discussions that they will close daycares. And as of right now, Nikki said that that's not happening. They're going to stay as long as they can. Going forward, next week or this week, not really anything on the agenda, but like Dean said, subject to change.
All right. Obviously, same thing as Wednesday and Friday. The only thing I had different was Thursday. I spent a couple hours on a Zoom meeting with Region 12 and Region 8 of the Iowa workforce. We had a long discussion about the 28E agreement that we will be working on and trying to get to the counties. That all went pretty well. There's a little liability question is being really examined. It looks like it's a per capita. That's the gist of it. But we're trying to tie as much liability to the fault maker as we can, but it's tough. It's tough to do. So that will be an ongoing conversation. Hopefully we'll get the final 28E and then get them sent out. We kind of made a gentleman's agreement between some people on our region and some people on their region that we were going to continue to look for this merger to make sure the best we could do with it. And I do like it because it's a lot of the mental health region people that were already kind of familiar with them anyway. That'll bring that back to the board when we get there. Obviously, I think I'll take it to John first. Once we get this hammered out amongst us, have him review it, see if he sees any errors in it, and then bring it to the board. So that it'll be a while yet, but the conversation is going. This week, I really don't have anything in front of me except I got a couple things. I'm gonna stop out and see Zach today, and Steph, I'll call you later about an issue there. And I got a couple other things I'll be back in the courthouse for this week. Other than that, I have nothing else. Courtney.
Gonna look up thresholds for competitive bidding. I'll get back to Ray on that.
Thank you.
I'm assuming we'll have another update on everything that's going on. I'll probably continue to put that on the agenda, and if Sarah can be here or was going to be here, that's great. If not, we can just not do it. But
Okay.
I'll probably continue to put that on the agenda moving forward. I believe, I don't think I have anything scheduled.
Nothing scheduled. There's nothing scheduled for next Monday. We'll play it by ear. I'll talk to some of you probably in between. Dean, do you want to keep, I think Courtney mentioned wants to keep Sarah on there as a possible update. I think we'll leave her on there, but if something doesn't, we don't need it, we don't need it, we can always scratch it.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch with Sarah and
Very
in touch with you guys as far as anything, if anything should change there.
Okay. Is there anybody else guys you want to put on the agenda for next week?
No.
Okay, if you do, you know how to find Courtney or myself. If not, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. See you guys later. Stay safe.
Hey, Rich,
Yeah.
you plan on me doing the radio and the newspaper?
Steph, you want to grab a hold of it today?